This is not a historical photo from a Nazi concentration and extermination camp. It's AI generated. These kinds of fakes are a huge problem. Today we'll explain why and point you to other better digital ways to understand history. For example, interacting with the Holocaust survivors' hologram. These types of AI-generated images are a worrying social media trend. They claim to show camps used by the Nazis to imprison and murder millions of people, mostly Jews. Many posting these images seek attention and clicks, but they distort historical facts and trivialize victim suffering. Sharing them contributes to the problem. But what are the consequences of AI being used to fake history? This AI-generated photo allegedly shows a prisoner in the Auschwitz extermination camp. And these AI videos are supposed to show the liberation of prisoners from concentration camps by the Allied forces. While this AI content is circulating on social media, it's not actually original footage. Take a closer look. The violin only has 3 strings. The prisoner uniform does not resemble the striped original. And some of the men are wearing belts, which were not part of the prison uniform. Spotting these details requires time and background knowledge. As AI-generated images and videos are improving, it's becoming a lot harder to tell fakes apart from historical footage. AI fakes are creating a misleading picture of the Holocaust.
I suspect that these images change what we're used to seeing. The images seem polished. What they depict is not realistic at all. Fragments of the camps, such as fences or watchtowers, are used, but they don't correspond to historical reality.
But not only the images are changing. AI fakes also overwrite and devalue the stories of the victims.
The images of the real people who were murdered in Auschwitz is part of the story. And here is something that is distorting the historical authenticity. But then on another level, you can find posts that not only generate an image, but the image isn't based on any real person. The whole story is AI generated. The name, the biography, very personal details that these posts write, and everything is fake.
AI-generated content presents fictional stories as seemingly authentic. This makes it more difficult for users to distinguish historical facts from fakes. Some people try to exploit this politically.
In the wake of these AI fakes, we have also found that revisionist far-right actors are using this content to try to tell a denialist version of the history of the camps. This is a dilution of actual historical facts.
Holocaust survivor Tova Friedman has a clear opinion on people who generate these fakes.
They're doing Hitler's work because Hitler had a whole propaganda system. By making up these fake videos, they are continuing the job of the Nazi.
Tova Friedman fights anti-Semitism and misinformation, where it's often hardest and matters most.
I had no name. My name was 27,633.
This video of Tova Friedman has more than 8 million views on TikTok. As a toddler, she survived the Auschwitz extermination camp, the place where the Nazis murdered around 1 million people, mostly Jews, in the 1940s.
We stood there naked for a number of hours, freezing, absolutely freezing.
Tova's nephew Aaron came up with the idea of telling his grandmother's story on TikTok.
I saw so much anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial and misinformation about the Holocaust on TikTok specifically. And because I was familiar with the algorithm, I thought it'd be the best place to start talking about the Holocaust and sharing the truth, the reality of what the Holocaust was. Here on the left.
Everything started with an open call for TikTok users to ask Tova Friedman questions in 2021.
Comment any questions you would like her to answer. Over the next couple days, we started getting thousands and thousands of questions. So from then on, we just started trying to answer as many as possible.
Today, the account has more than 500,000 followers. The videos have received over 10 million likes from all over the world.
Well, for me, it was the reaching of teenagers that I couldn't reach any other way. TikTok is like, oh, those kids are out there somewhere, most of them not Jewish, and they just scroll, and when they stop and they listen, and not only do they listen, but they ask questions. To me, it was a very gratifying way.
In addition to likes, however, the TikTok account is also targeted with hate speech. Aaron Goodman will not accept that open anti-Semitism is becoming normalized.
It's the hatred and the misinformation that motivates me to keep doing this work, because it's proof that what we are doing is important and needs to be done.
Tova Friedman not only uses TikTok to raise awareness, she also gives talks, like here in Berlin. But what happens when there are no survivors left? Technology helps preserve memories and make their stories more tangible. This school class is about to meet a digital representation of a Holocaust survivor. In their VR headsets, they can ask the hologram of Manfred Goldberg questions.
Exaggerating. 1 in a million survivors who had both parents alive.
As a child, Manfred Goldberg was imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp. In virtual reality, the students can visit the Stutthof concentration camp that Manfred Goldberg speaks about and explore Kassel, where he lived.
My favorite part was using the VR headsets and how we got to see the spaces, because it was really cool.
And a real victim that has gone through the events, obviously, that occurred, telling you his real experiences, it's amazing.
Holograms offer a different access to history than films.
What the holograms do is that they enable audiences to be very active in the interaction. And so they have to really delve into themselves to make sense of this encounter. They have to formulate questions about the Holocaust that would make sense. They have to show an interest in another person's life.
Years ago, Manfred Goldberg answered 1,000 questions about his life for the Testimony 360 project. When students ask the hologram a question, the AI selects the most appropriate answer from his interview. Manfred Goldberg has since passed away, but his story lives on through his hologram, accessible but never a substitute for him. Speaking with holograms of survivors can even be done from home. On the Illinois Holocaust Museum website, you can either use a chat or voice messages.
Obviously, they knew who we were. It was the Death March. They saw the rest go by, probably.
In Germany, the equivalent is the Holo Voices project. Here you are seated in a room with others and can jointly ask questions to holograms of Holocaust survivors like Eva Weil and Inge Auerbacher.
It was really impressive. For a moment, you really felt as if the person was actually sitting there.
If the dialogue with the hologram works well, participants can even develop a sense of closeness.
What's really promising about the recordings is you can ask questions you really want answered. For example, I've seen people ask questions like, how much did you weigh on liberation? And they probably wouldn't have asked that of a survivor in person. However, if you don't have enough knowledge about the Holocaust, you might not be able to frame questions in such a way that you get meaningful responses, and that can become really frustrating.
An AI selecting the answers does not mean that it is inventing anything new.
All answers are original. There's no generative AI behind it that would invent an answer and potentially risk reproducing something that isn't actually true. Rather, this AI searches for the best possible answer to a question, which is then reproduced without any changes.
When used correctly, AI can help people learn about the Holocaust. But what about games? Many titles set in the Nazi era focus on dramatic, fictional stories rather than historical accuracy. A common plot? Battling Nazi forces. That's why many games feature Nazis as enemies, but far fewer address the Holocaust directly. But is it even possible to represent this appropriately in a game? Some narrative-driven games try to depict the persecution and murder of Jews in a historically accurate way. One example is The Light in the Darkness, which tells the story of a Jewish family in Nazi-occupied Paris. The historical content is presented primarily through text and documents rather than game mechanics and algorithms. Players cannot win, and there's a reason for that.
By putting the Holocaust in the game and having even this concept of winning or losing, we could victim blame. We could say, why did this person did this and not that? And that is why he didn't survive.
What do you want to know?
Some games address this by not putting players in the role of victims, but by looking back at past events instead. In The Darkest Files, players take on the role of a prosecutor during the Frankfurt Auschwitz trials in the 1960s, investigating crimes committed in the Nazi era. In The Red Line, a detective pursues war criminals who were able to flee after the end of World War II thanks to secret networks. Both games find a way to engage with the horrors of the past without forcing players to actually relive them.
There is no way of changing the past. So we're gonna put these events already in the past of the in-game time, and therefore we can't mess with it, we can't change it, we can't blame the victims because it already happened.
As the last living witnesses pass away, direct access to their memories will disappear. In games, however, their stories can continue to be conveyed in a personal and immersive way.
Gaming is bigger in terms of profit more than movies and music combined together. If our goal is to continue with the Holocaust memory and with the remembrance for the next generations, it's not that we have to use this tool, is that if we're not using it, we are overlooking something that has so much potential.
The key is that information is reliable and presented responsibly. Games, TikToks or digital holograms can keep the memory of the Holocaust alive and counter hate and anti-Semitism. What makes history feel especially tangible for you? That's all from us this week. Bye for now.